Hip hop.
Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. We are so excited to be here today and that you've decided to join us. For those of you who viewed the show last week, we are going to do part 2 of our conversation on domestic violence. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to start out with our scripture. It is Psalms 139 and 14, and it states, I will praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know for sure. Amen. And so we're going to talk about that as it relates to how we have to take care of ourselves. We are wonderfully made by the great I am, and we don't always know that because we sometimes find ourselves in situations or doing things that do not represent how wonderful we are. So Sherelle and Tracy, thank you all. I know Sherelle, I know you just got back on the road, so I appreciate you pressing your way back to be on the show and to get here on time.
Yes.
And safe travels.
Yes. I'm a soccer mom, so, we were in Pennsylvania playing soccer. The team lost 2 games out of 3, but that's okay. Jalen showed up and showed out.
All right, Jay.
He played very well. I'm seeing a lot of development in his game under this coach that he's currently playing with. So we're just waiting for the Lord to work his magic and get him that scholarship to college so that he can get out in 18 months.
Exactly. 18 months. She's ready to kick him out. Before we get started, I haven't said this to anyone, but the early bird tickets for the 4th annual Woman Thou Art Great Women Sharpening Women Conference officially went off sale yesterday, which was December the 1st. But in conversations with so many of my faithful followers and attenders, they're like, can you give us one more week? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give you all one more week. And so I'm going to leave the early bird ticket rates open until next Friday. Next Friday is December the 8th. Whatever date it is. The 7th.
People get paid on Friday and Saturday.
Okay, I didn't know that. We get paid on Thursdays, so I didn't realize that.
Friday and Saturday.
Okay, so I'm going to leave the early bird ticket rates open until next Friday, which is the 7th. And so get your tickets, and because you don't want to miss this awesome, awesome conference. And what we're talking about here today is one of the topics that we actually covered somewhat at the first conference that we had. And of course, those of you who already know, Sherelle is the MC, but Sherelle is going to serve as one of our speakers. And the theme this year is unapologetically great. And I am so excited about that topic. You have no idea, because some of us, we just don't even understand how great we are. Because we were fearfully and wonderfully made. So we should be unapologetically great about our gifts and talents. So we really are going to spend some time talking about that.
And here's what I would like our audience to do at some point today. Don't do it right now because you're watching the show. But when you finish watching the show, I want you to go into the bathroom or go into your room and look in the mirror and say, I am great and I will not apologize for it.
Exactly. And so
I tell myself that every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't say
You have
perfect.
to.
We said great.
Right.
There's a difference, right?
You can claim perfection if you want to.
Yeah, but
I do.
okay. I don't know. But as I did a little bit more research on this topic of domestic violence, one of the things I found out in my reading is that Prince George's County, Maryland, the county council, they have appropriated $500,000 in their FY 2019 budget for programs related to housing and counseling and advocacy work around this topic of domestic violence. And one of the things that we know for sure is that we can end domestic violence. And before the show, we were talking about, we have so many initiatives out here, and people get in an uproar about this and an uproar about that, but we are not getting in an uproar about domestic violence, and it is literally killing people. And it just appears to be getting worse and worse and worse. And so that's why we just believe that it's so important for us to have a candid conversation, an authentic conversation about what it is we understand about it and what's happening, and hopefully to try to save somebody's life.
Yes, absolutely. And before we have Tracy introduce herself to you all again, I want to just take a minute to recognize that today marks 3 years since our maternal grandmother passed away.
Yes, Nana.
And she was 93 years old, and her husband is still living. So there goes the theory of when you've been together 70-some years, you usually pass within 6 months to a year of the spouse passing away. So I just like to take a minute to just kind of remember my grandmother. And then also just kind of take a minute to shout out my great aunt, who is 91 years old and is in the process of transitioning. Spoke to my cousin. I want to give a huge shout out to my cousin Gloria, who has done exactly what she's supposed to do as a daughter. She has taken her mother in, and she has taken care of her mother for the last, 5-10 years. And I spoke with her this morning, just to do a pulse check, not only on my aunt who is making the transition, but also on her, because that is a commitment that is tough on a person in terms of their livelihood, in terms of their body, in terms of their mental state. It's just a tough thing to have to do, and she's doing it with class and with style. Yes. So for that, I like to say thank you, Gloria, for taking care of my auntie, and also, auntie, we love you.
Yes.
Excuse me, that should be a topic, a caregiver.
Yes, caregiver could be a topic.
Absolutely.
That's great.
That's a hard job.
Yes,
it's
it
a
is.
thankless job.
It is.
And all of you who are on our social media feeds, please try to log into listenvisionlive.com so you can see the show in its entirety. And of course, we would love for you to participate by calling in. The number is 833-202-8255. And so we're going to transition and let Tracy introduce herself to us again, and we're going to just go ahead and really, really dig a little deeper into this conversation about domestic violence.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Like I said, I'm Tracy Jefferson. I'm a single mom of my son, Stephen, and I'm a survivor. I'm so glad to say that because a lot of people can't say that. But I'm truly loved by my son, my nieces, my sisters and brothers, and a host of friends. So I don't have a big story, but
yes, exactly.
And
so again, Tracy wrote the book Domestic Violence Survivor Memoir, Suffering in Silence. And I started reading this book. Oh, it is so good. And what makes it so good to me is her transparency. Her transparency about who she was before, you made the transition and developed a relationship with God, right?
Yes.
And then how you found yourself in a domestic violence relationship. Yeah. And so you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. It was 5:30 in the morning, December 30th, 1996, the morning of our first wedding anniversary. I was propped in my favorite resting position in our bedroom, watching television with my husband laying next to me. I greeted him with a pleasant good morning. He greeted me with his teeth clenched ever so tightly, and evil was in his eyes, asking, "Who is he? Who are you sleeping with?" Before I could respond, he was on top of me with his hands around my throat, choking the life out of me. He said again, "You better tell me, who you sleeping with?" As the breath began to leave my limp body, I reached up to touch his face. I can remember smiling and thinking calmly, "Well, Lord, is this how my life ends?" My next thought was that of my 10-year-old son. Who would tell him the truth? At that point, the nightmare began, and I'm welcoming you to Suffering in Silence.
Yes, I thought that introduction was so powerful about, you know, that pivotal moment, really, that you probably realized that, you know, this was significant. So what was going on in your mind, you know, for you to capture that to use as an introduction?
Well, what was going on was first, I used to love Christmas, and I had been out Christmas shopping. And I was gone for so long that he thought I was out with another man. Mm-hmm. Now, if anybody know women, when we say we're going to go to the store, we shop, we talk, you know. So I chose that as my opening because it was, one, unbelievable, two, our first anniversary. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is how it started. Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be a celebratory type of day.
Yes.
But it ends up turning into this nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember us. I think we ate the cake like a couple of days because, you know, you have your topping of your
right.
cake.
Yes.
I wasn't even interested in eating the cake, the topper, at that time. Mm-hmm. So it was a true nightmare, and it was a nightmare for 6 years.
Yes. And so Tracy opened up with her introduction about the nightmare, and I think Sherelle wants to kind of bring it home in terms of the cases that we've just heard recently in the news.
And so, you know, we can start, I mean, there's a lot of them out there, but we can start with the Kansas City Chief player. Now, we're not going to be mentioning anybody's name on this show because they don't really deserve us mentioning their names. But the Kansas City Chief player who was on video in a hotel kicking a young lady while she was down, pushed her to the floor. Just ridiculousness. Also, you know, let's talk about, you know, the least of the Redskins' worries at this point is what their name is. You know, the fact that they immediately picked up a young man who was accused of domestic violence is a problem.
Not once, but twice. I think they said 3 times. I'm not sure if that was valid, but
yes, it was certainly not the first time that this young man had been accused of domestic violence. And the fact that they didn't even wait for the investigation to play itself out, they just immediately signed this young man. And, you know, there's just so many different cases out here that we could talk about, and, you know, forget the ones that's on the TV. We know of cases in our own lives that we could talk about. And, you know, what do you do? How do you facilitate that? How can you, you know, be supportive from the sidelines? But these young athletes, you know, they look like grown men, but they don't. But they're not. And, you know, they're out here, you know, many of them coming from the inner city, going into a lifestyle that they have just an excessive amount of money and not necessarily having the support system around them to kind of help guide them in the right direction. They just out here wilding out, and, you know, everything is being videoed now.
Yes.
And so the whole notion that this young man from the Kansas City Chiefs didn't even care that he was being videoed and he was putting his livelihood on the line tells me that this young man is troubled, right? And he doesn't have the capacity to control himself enough to really think about himself first and think, you know, is it really worth me losing my career and my name and my reputation over this young lady who, I don't know if he knew her or not. Do you all know if he knew her?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know what what the relationship was, but the whole notion that he kicked her, you know, that is hard to watch on a video.
And 2 things I want to say before Tracy comes back is that I was getting my nails done on Friday, and it was a Vietnamese man. I had never been to this place. It was right next door to the place that I work out. And I said, well, let me just check it out. And while he was doing my nails, that story came on. And he said, you know, at least you all have human rights in the United States. And I said, so what do you mean by that? He said, well, in a lot of countries, my country, just countries all over the world, women get beat down. They said, they are abused, they are killed, and nothing is done because in our countries, women don't have value. And so this domestic violence phenomenon is more than just an isolated incident or an incident here and there. It is about how human beings see other human beings, right? And in some countries, men put a value on women, and which is nothing. You're just here for me to have sex with you, to beat you, and for you to have my children. That's what you're here for. And I just thought that was so alarming. And then on the other point that I wanted to make, Sherelle said, we know people. I have so many people in my life, females I've known that who've been victims of domestic violence in relationships with someone they thought they loved, right? And I didn't know what to do. Right. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about your friends and family, and people just don't know what to do. And when I think back, I said, well, heck, I could have at least called the police, right? Well, but if the person that's in the relationship don't want you to call the police, it just puts you in between a rock and a hard place. And so that's where I really want to go in this conversation today. I know we want to talk about how did it impact your sex life, future relationships, and your friendships and family relationships.
Okay.
You can start wherever you want.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with used to be my team. I'm very disgusted with the Redskins. I really am. I'm very disgusted with Doug Williams' comment, even though he did try to come back and apologize. Once it's out there, it's out there.
And what did he say?
He said what this guy did was small potatoes compared to, I guess, other people that have done more horrendous things. Well, he has daughters. So I would like to know, would you consider that small potatoes if one of their boyfriends or husbands was abusing them? Okay, so we're going to leave that one right there.
Enough said.
So I will no longer dress as a Redskin. I usually put my gear on every Sunday. So no, all that's gone. As far as friendships, that's a iffy subject only because you want the person to be there. You're asking them to be patient with you. If they was anything like me, I knew mine was coming to an end. I knew it, but I just needed time. I needed my best friend Joyce to be patient with me. I knew it was hard for her because, like she told you last week, her sister was murdered, and she couldn't bear to have that pain with me, to go through that again. I don't know what it's like to have a sister murdered like that, but I was with her in it, so I get it. But I told her, I said, just be patient with me. She teased me because I was crying. I did. I cried because I love her just like my own sister.
Yes.
So, but you have to be patient with the friend, because if they are really going to come out, just be there for them when they do come out. It is an end point to it. Only if I knew mine was going to be an end. I knew my marriage was going to be over, but I needed to make sure that I had dotted all the I's and crossed the T's before I actually walked out completely. And even with my son, you have to have a plan. Even with my son hated me. He was so disgusted with me. I talk about him in the book. I have a chapter just for him. He's my hero, and I titled it "My Son, My Hero." Even though he hated me, he hated the fact that I was still allowing him to, live with us and to, be, in the house with us. He couldn't get it. He didn't understand it. So I had to talk to him separately. And I told him, I said, Steve, just be patient with me. I said, just follow me as I follow Christ. I didn't know what I was doing, but God had the plan. I didn't have the plan. And I just had to see what God had for me. That might sound corny, but I promise you it's the God's honest truth. Then in my plan, I was afraid, but I had this book. and the title of the book is "Do It Afraid,"
Yes.
and I literally had to do it afraid.
Do it afraid.
Yes,
And
I
know
like
who,
it.
You know who wrote that, right?
Yes, do it afraid.
I read that book over and over, and I was afraid. So that was one step that I had to take. So once I did that, there was no looking back. I went to the courthouse. I told them everything that was going on, and as far as the sex part, it's non-existing. I used to love getting back massages and feet rubbed, and he used to like scratch my hair. I don't know if women like that. I love doing that. Well, it had got to the point, oh, I didn't even want you touching me anymore.
Okay, so how does that work? So you have a man, if we could call him that.
And by the way, listening audience, we're about to go a little deeper, I believe, into this conversation. And so if you have some
About
children,
intimacy.
yeah, yeah, use your own, adult
Your own
discretion.
judgment, but you know they doing whatever. So let's talk about the intimacy part, because again, this is a no judgment zone, and so it's important for us to be able to really give our audience some insight into how this works. Because if you have a person physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, abusing financially, psychologically, abusing you, how do you get up the courage to deny them the intimacy? And how does that, like, does it slowly evolve over time? And what's the abuser's reaction to that?
Well, it depends on the stage. In the very beginning, once he would cry and beg and say it's not going to happen again, you believe it. Deep down inside, you really do want to believe this person is never going to do it again. So it's easy to be forgiving. So the first couple of times it happened, I was okay having sex with him. It took me some weeks, so it didn't happen like the same day. So don't get that twisted. He would do things. He would cook dinner all the time, wash clothes. He would keep the house clean. He would do all those kind of things. So once I got off from work, I didn't have to do anything. So things like that wore me down. So I was like, okay, I appreciate that, So then you kind of let your guard down. But as the abuse continued, and then it was more evil. It's like you just that's the last thing you think about. I get grossed out just even thinking about you wanting to, touch me in a sexual kind of manner, because the same hands that you use to punch me
My God.
or to smack me, and now you want to rub my breast or my back. I don't know if anybody's ever been raped, but it's a icky feeling. It's just like that. I mean, not to say it's just like that, but you get disgusted.
Yes.
You feel sick to your stomach. So after a while, it was none. He moved down to the basement of the house, and I stayed upstairs. And he would, come up. You want me to rub your feet? No, thank you. I'm good. Thank you. And I was saying to myself, dang, I got married to have no sex. You know what I mean? Like you a born again Christian. You're supposed to save yourself for marriage. I'm married and don't even want to do it. Ain't that I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it. So
did that make him angrier?
Right.
When you refused his advances? What?
When we still stayed in the same bedroom, it did. And but at this point, I do believe he was messing around.
Okay.
So
And that's something.
right. So
He had the nerve.
yeah. So at that point, I didn't care. I could truly say within the last 3 years of our marriage, I never allowed him to touch me anymore.
And how long were you married?
6 years.
6 years. So how did he get to the basement?
He got to the basement of the house because of the abuse, one, and I was in school, and I used to have my computer in the basement. I would go down and do my homework. Once my son, because he would have his friends down there, once all of them left, I would go downstairs do my homework. Well, I got a phone bill one day, and my phone bill was usually maybe $45 or something. At this point, it was almost $1,200.
Oh my goodness.
So I called the phone company, like, what in the world is going on? So the lady said, well, and she was so nice, guys. She was whispering. She said, it's chat line. I was like, what is a chat line? She said, do you have a son? I said, yeah. And so I said, well, what time of day and night? It was like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, no, I know it's not my son. So the lady explained to me what it was. You're meeting women. Back then, we didn't have Facebook and all that. It was, you dial into those chat lines and it cost. I didn't know that. So I learned that day. He had talked to so many people that the phone bill was $1,200. But I can truly say this is another one God was good, because the lady waived every charge except for my normal phone bill.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I broke down, started crying.
Wow.
So immediately, I brought the computer upstairs to the spare bedroom, and he just started staying down there. You know, he knew. Then he would come in all hours of the day and night. That was another thing. So I never really heard, or to be honest, I didn't even care what time he came in,
Right.
as long as he didn't come upstairs. So he got to the basement for a couple of reasons. For that, there was no intimacy ever for a long time. So, so that's how he ended up getting to the basement.
And so did the physical abuse continue after he moved to the basement?
Yes, it wasn't as frequent as it was before he moved down there, but it was still happening. He would come upstairs, and a couple times I would be exercising. After so long, you get numb. So I was numb, and he would talk. He would say things. He would make threats, and I'd be like, "Go ahead, hurry up and do it, get it over with." So that's how I was during that time. So he would reach to want to kick me, and I'm gonna be real honest with you, ladies.
Be honest.
I would pray, and I know God didn't hear it, but I would say, Lord, as soon as he touched me, stop his heart.
Yeah,
Kill him.
exactly. That's real.
That's all I did. I would just say, kill him.
I can see how you got there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I could definitely see how you got there.
So, so he wouldn't. It seemed like either the prayer worked, answered, or something, but he would reach back to kick me, and then he'll stop, and I'll just lay there and just continue to exercise. I was trying to do some sit-ups or leg up, warm ups, or whatever. I'll be on the floor, and he would come up, and I'm like, okay, do what you do best. I got to the point I was so used to getting grabbed and smacked. The last punch was in my head, and I had this knot in my head. So after a while, you do get numb to it. I don't suggest anybody get that way, but I did.
And so looking back at that situation, because you were in your 30s, so you had never experienced any domestic violence prior to getting into your 30s and marrying this particular person. So just looking back on your life, how do you think you got there? I know you said a little bit about this last week, but I think our new listening audience may want to hear a little bit about that.
Well, I got there through the not dealing with issues. I had 3 major deaths in my family. I was losing my job, or have lost my job, I'll say that. I was laid off, fired, whatever you want to call it. I got a severance package. So when my mom died, she was truly my rock. And I would always run things past her. Like, Mom, what you think of this? But I couldn't do that to her. I couldn't ask her about this. And I did not handle grief properly. I did not handle my insecurity properly. I didn't handle feeling abandoned properly. So when you have a lot of issues, and I have a lot of adjectives in the book that I really want ladies and men to take a look at. I had a lot of those issues. And So that's how I got there, not dealing with first things 1st. Just, if I would have grieved my mom properly, I'm almost positive I wouldn't have been there, because I know she would have said
vulnerable.
that, yeah. I was
Vulnerable.
just, and I thought he was a blessing from God. I really did.
And this is the point in the conversation that I would like to say, and I said this last week. When you turn on the television or radio shows, and even our show, you often have the woman that was abused here telling her story. But for me, I would like to have a conversation with a man who's a former abuser, someone that went down that road, put their hands on a woman, and they have really repented and changed their lives, just to help women understand and get an insight in terms of what was really going on with that person, that they felt that it was okay to abuse you, right? I think that conversation is necessary.
Yeah.
Oh, that
It
conversation is necessary.
Very necessary, because I look at it like this: if you have a mom or a sister that you love dearly, the person that you're abusing, that's somebody's mom too. That's somebody's
Exactly.
sister. Somebody loves that person too. And if you don't want it done to your daughter or your mother, your sister, don't do it to somebody else's.
Exactly.
And I don't care how mean or mouthy a person can be, no one deserves to get beat up, physically beat up, beat down, talked about, spit on. None of that. We don't deserve any of that.
Okay,
Yeah,
you
he
just
spit in my
said something that
face once.
struck something in me. That whole spitting thing.
He did that
It-
once too.
Oh my Jesus.
Yeah.
That to me is the lowest of the low. Like to me, that is the ultimate sign of disrespect.
Yeah.
Spitting on people is just
This is just nasty.
yeah.
It's just nasty.
And I think Sherelle said
That
something
breaks
at
my
the
heart.
beginning when we opened up about this is no judgment. But it just reminds me, so often we do hear people judging the victim.
Right.
Right, and I just don't know how we got there. Maybe because people are uncomfortable. I don't know. And if you're out there listening, if you want to call in and help us with this conversation, you can call in at 833-202-8255. But the whole judgment thing, were you ever judged? Did any family members, friends ever judge you and think that you were the cause of the abuse?
No.
Good.
No. I could truly say no for a couple of reasons, because I never really told my family.
Oh, well, that's it. Okay.
So I didn't actually tell them what was going on. They knew I was unhappy. They just didn't know why I was unhappy. Joyce was really the only friend that knew it at the time. There was others that might have suspected, but they didn't say anything. So, while I was at work, that was like a safe place for me. I loved going to work because I knew at least for those 8-10 hours, if I did overtime, I'm fine. I can get my thoughts together, and, I can, work. Everybody around me was just so funny, and we made the workplace fun, and I even thanked them in my book, because they didn't realize what they was doing for me. They was helping me. They was giving me courage and giving me strength. And I've seen signs of some women that I used to work with. I know they're being abused, and some of the signs that they would portray at work, they were bossy. They were bullies. And one young lady, I told her, I said, now we both know you're not like this at home, so stop. Don't do this here at work, because you're not the boss at home. And so this is her way of,
So it's a very
trying to-
extreme behavior that they demonstrate. That's interesting. I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, and some of them are real timid. Now, I was the type of, at one point, somebody could drop and I would shake, because my nerves were so bad. You see somebody like that, you're like, why are you so jumpy? What you doing? You ain't got no business doing. What's happening? So God allowed me to really look at people like that. And just hug them. It's gonna be okay. I'm not sure what's going on. If you ever need to talk, I would open myself up to them.
What's very interesting about what you just said about at work, it reminds me, and those of you that are on social media, wherever you are, you can Google this while I'm talking about it. I remember a few years ago where the first husband in the United States of America was sentenced to over 30 years in jail. And I believe the case happened in New Jersey. And what was so profound about it to me was that the lady was going to work. Her supervisor, so this is a whole nother conversation about leadership, right? Her supervisor would notice a black eye or, something with her. And you remember, I think, did we talk about this already? The old desk calendars. And she would mark on the desk calendar that she saw so-and-so had a black eye. And so when they went to court, the supervisor was able to come to court with
Praise
the
God.
documentation that she had laid out all
Yes.
this time to say,
Wonderful.
no, this is really happening. And the other compelling piece of it for me was they had 2 children, and the man would make the children watch and videotape him as he was beating his wife. And so
Yes.
and so it was the video recordings, it was the supervisor, documenting on her calendar what she saw that really helped to get that man convicted, because otherwise it would have been a he said, she said. And the fact that you said that your family didn't know, their 2 children were aware, but I think it was just normal for them. And when the father was arrested and taken to jail, the 2 children actually became very mad at the mother and wouldn't speak to her. But it could be also that what you said, your son hated you because you were in that situation, and maybe that was their way of saying, we didn't want to be in this situation, so we're mad at you for even
Putting us
in this
They didn't ask
situation,
for it.
and they didn't ask for it.
And that's true. That's why I tell, as part of a plan, I had written a letter, and I told my friend, if anything happens to me, just hold on to this letter. And it documented everything up to that point. So everything that I had been through at that point was in that letter. I said, so if I come up missing or if I'm deceased, give this to the police, give it to my family, let them read this letter. But I told her, do not open it. And then once everything was over, I got divorced. She actually gave me back my letter, and so I made sure somebody was going to know something.
So let me ask you this. So how does, okay, so once you get out of the situation, right? How do you get to date again? Because to me, I'd be looking at everybody's side eye.
You do.
And like who you talking to, right? And so how do you get beyond that and really
Trust
begin?
again.
I was going to say begin to trust people. And trust a man that you're going to be intimate with.
Well, it takes a lot of work. I don't suggest you get into another relationship right away because it's a lot of healing that has to take place. And it took me almost about 4 years before I dated anybody else. Because not to say that I was just that jacked up, but I needed to make sure that I was healed, that I was not, that all my scars were gone. So I met a guy, and we dated for a while, and I had told him, I said, I don't think we're meant to marry, but I think we're meant to be best friends.
Okay.
And actually, we're still friends to this day. He did propose to me, but we never married. And I had always told him I never felt that.
Yes.
And I love him with all my heart now and wish him the best. And he's a good person, but he just wasn't to be my husband. And I did take him through some changes, though.
I'm sure.
I'd be lying if I said
right.
everything
that's the
was
truth
good
about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he like, I'm not that other person, right?
Right, exactly.
Right.
And I think, and that's what a lot of men would say, you know, dating women that have been through things is very difficult. And I think they expect women who've been abused to just get
Bounce
over
back.
it and bounce
Yes.
back. But like you said, it is a process and it's a lot of healing, you know, and you had to have that experience to even realize that you were still dealing with
Yes.
some of your issues.
Yeah, and you I mean, the best part, you have to acknowledge it. You have to, and even another guy that I had dated, I told him up front, you know what, I might need you to be a little gentle because, you know, you can't just beat a person up. Even though you wasn't the abuser, you can't go and just think, you know, it's all good and, you know, you should be over it by now. That's just like if a husband cheats on his wife. You expect her to just be over it. No, you got to do a lot of things.
Or a wife cheat on the husband. I just want
Right,
to,
wife cheat on the
I
husband.
just
You're
want to
right.
make it clear
Yeah,
both ways.
that happens too. But you don't just get over it right away. It is a process. So I'll tell any guy, just be patient with us. You know, we've been through a lot. We as women, even men, brothers go through it too, I know. But we as women can't catch a break sometimes. We gotta be the doctor, the nurse, the wife, the mother, the caretaker, the Christmas shopping person. I mean, we wear a lot of hats,
Yes, we do.
and we are very unappreciated. And men just don't get it. You can't just buy us a little ring and think we're supposed to be grateful. Mainly if you've done things to us, be patient with us. Be kind. You know, love us. Love the hurt out of us. You know,
I like
hold
that.
us.
Love the hurt out of us.
Yeah, mainly if you caused it. It's going to, just like you was planning on that affair, you're going to have to plan to win your wife back. To get our hearts can't just keep breaking and then keep mending, because after a while, when our tears stop, you done.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, wait.
I like that.
R. Kelly said it best. When a woman is fed up, it ain't nothing you could do about it.
Exactly.
And that's when the tears stop.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what you were saying, you know, he would come in and you would be doing your exercises and you're like, just take your best shot.
Do
you know,
it,
I'm
yeah.
done. I'm over this.
Right, so I can get
You
back
know,
up on
and
this
so I know-
treadmill
yeah, exactly.
and plot on you.
Yeah, because at that point, because I had gained so much weight, and
Yeah.
I looked at myself and I didn't even recognize myself. Y'all see how my height? I'm like, what, 5'1"? I was weighing like almost 1820. That was too much weight for my short frame, and there's nothing wrong with somebody that's weighing 1820.
Right.
God knows
Because
ain't nothing wrong with it.
that's not
'Cause-
the story we talking about.
Right. But the fact that I had lost myself, I was an emotional eater. I found I did a lot of things because I was hurting. And we need to just stop sometimes and ask myself, why am I doing this?
Yeah, I like when you were talking about how you just always look below. Talk about when you finally looked at yourself in the mirror.
Yep. I would go to work, and, you know, we all like to look nice. I used to think that I dressed pretty good, but I never looked at myself from my face. I would be in the mirror, and I would just look to see what the outfit looked like from the bottom, from my chest down. And one day I was in the bathroom. I had braids in my hair, and I don't even like braids, but I had some braids in my hair because I couldn't afford to go to the hairdresser, and I was taking the braids out. And when I finally looked at myself, my face was like an ash gray. And I saw death. I think my next move, he was getting ready to kill me for real.
Wow.
And that was when the threat came that he would blow the house up. And I'm like, oh, hell, you know, okay, so it's going to be, you know, I figured like this. Okay, let me make a move now.
Right.
Right.
And I said, okay, absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Yes.
If I die, at least I'm be with God. If I live, okay, then something has to give. So that was my enough. When I saw myself, my son hated me. I had so much work to do and I couldn't have my son hating me for the rest of my life. That right there,
Yeah, that's a lot.
yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, to have your child look at you with such disgust, that's a hurtful thing.
Yeah, it is. And okay, so Sharon and I have a younger sister who is very vocal about
She
her
is.
experience
Yes.
with domestic violence and talking about, and she's very active in working with shelters and all of that, you know, trying to help women who are also going through that experience. But she spoke at the first conference,
did.
and I tell you, the one story that stuck out in my mind that she told was when the tears stopped. That
Yes.
story.
Yes.
And when she had decided she had had enough, and she said that she took the kids to our parents' house, and she went back home, and she knew that one of them was probably
Yes.
not going to come out of that apartment.
Yes.
And she said that she went and she knew when he came home that night it was going down. And so she said when he came in the house, she locked the door behind him. And she was like, all right, here we go. This is, and you know, he drank. And so when he came home, he was drunk, and she told him, she was like, okay, this is it. I'm leaving, and I locked the door, because if this is going to be our last fight, one of us not going to make it out of here.
Right,
And that
exactly.
story really stuck with me, because, you know, she planned her exit, and she knew that it wasn't necessarily going to be something that he was going to be in agreement with. But she prepared herself, and she had just decided that she would rather die that day than to continue to live in a death situation.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so that story just kind of always stuck with me. So I say kudos to, you know, anybody who is living in or having that kind of experience, and they just really step up and take a stance and say, I've had enough. I'm going to leave regardless as to what you plan to do to me. I've just had enough. And, you know, and I think about the experiences my parents went through
Yes.
with my sister, and it was just so much, you know, and as a someone who loves someone going through that, it's tough, because they have to make the decision themselves that they've had enough. And you know, we not really meaning to be judgmental, we can stand on the sidelines and say, if it was me, well, you don't really
I'll
know
do
what you
this.
would do
No,
if
you
somebody
don't.
just you know, just like slapped you. You don't know what you would do. First you would be in shock, particularly if it's the first time.
Right.
And then you just don't know, because I just can't even imagine what that's like, you know. And so I say kudos to you, Tracy. Kudos to my sister Felicia, and anybody else who made the decision that they deserve better, they are better, and they're going to do better, because they're going to make sure that whoever is abusing them in any type of way know that they no longer have the power.
Exactly.
And abuse starts young. And so what would you tell young girls, because I don't know how many of you watched the show Greenleaf. Greenleaf is dealing with
Yes.
that whole situation with one of the pastor's granddaughter. And I think she was 17 at the time that it started happening. And then when she turned 18, you know, she left the house, and there was nothing her parents could do. What would you say? And that is just on Greenleaf, but we already know that that's happening in real life. What would you tell, you know, young women about, you know, their self-worth, and, you know, or what they should do? Because I have another friend whose daughter went through that as a young person. It was nothing that they could do. They even got into a fight with this young man, and she still went with him.
Well, the first thing I would say is they have to, the parents, we have to just be patient with them. To the young girls, that's not love, sweetheart. If anybody got to put their hands on you, that's not love. That's a sign of someone who is just trying to control you. And I'll tell a person in a minute, I'm not a remote. You do not need to control me.
Exactly.
You don't need to manipulate. All you got to do is ask me.
Right.
If I could do it, I'm going to do it. But they don't love you. That's one. Please know that. Two, you have to ask yourself, what you don't deserve this.
Right.
You definitely don't deserve. I don't care how mean your temper is or what you've done. You don't deserve to be hit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't deserve to be spit, kicked, punched, pushed, anything.
Called out your name.
Called out your exactly. You do not deserve that.
Cursed at.
Yes, and it's nothing wrong with being by yourself. Because for one, by you being young, you really don't know yourself.
Right.
I was in my 30s and I still didn't know what I didn't know what I liked. I liked things if everybody else liked them.
If it glittered
I
and
didn't
shined.
even, right. I didn't even have a favorite color during that time. Once I came out of that fog, colors, I was beginning to see rainbows.
Isn't that something? That's
I looked at my
What's
wardrobe.
your favorite color, Tracy?
My favorite color is pink, light blue, green, white.
Oh,
I
now
love
you got
all of them.
you went from none to a whole list of them. I love it. I love it.
And I looked in my closet. All of my clothes was dark. I didn't have anything, and I love flowers. I didn't have anything flowery. And I was like, what was wrong with me? Why did I had such a dark closet? And I changed. I started shopping for flowery things. I started shopping for anything pink. Give me something pink.
You went to the other extreme, Tracy?
I did. I never, and I never went to the movies by myself. I started going to dinner by myself. I started doing a lot of things by myself because I didn't realize I was one of those ones you always think you gotta have somebody with you. I'll kiss my own self now. You don't need that.
I love that.
Enjoy you. Because when you enjoy you, then you're going to attract what you're supposed to have.
There it is.
So,
But also one of the things I've been thinking about since our first show is that in our community, we have this saying, I'm not going to tell anybody my business.
right.
And I struggle
And what
with
happens
that.
in the house stays in the house.
I struggle with that.
Yeah.
I do. I'm not talking about just going out telling random people your business, but when you don't have a relationship with someone where you're, sharing things that's going on with you, I can't even imagine once you get into this situation, who do you share that with? Who do you share it with? And I just think that we have to do better by each other because I think that not sharing the business is all about what people are going to think about you,
Exactly.
the judgment. And we have a cousin, Mike. I've mentioned his name on this show a couple times. He told Ira many years ago, he was like, man, everybody got a story. So keep it moving, right? Don't let what people have to say about you and think about you stop you from doing what you know you want to do, right? Because everybody has a story.
Yep.
Everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching has a story. And nobody on this earth walks around without a story.
Exactly. Everybody has a secret.
A secret.
They just won't tell.
No doubt.
But if it comes to somebody beating you, please
Don't keep
tell
that
it.
no
Please
secret.
don't keep that a secret.
If somebody is sexually abusing
Yes.
you, don't keep that no secret.
Yes.
If somebody is physically abusing you, don't keep that no secret.
don't keep it a
Any
secret.
type of abuse, don't keep it a secret.
Right.
Tell somebody, tell everybody, yell it out loud
Yes.
because that's how you gain your support system. You need your support system to know what's going on.
Exactly.
And just yell it out. And, for the abuser who don't want you to tell anybody because that's part of their
Right.
control,
Yep.
tell them, oh, you done smacked me? Oh, I'm about to get on this phone.
Right.
I'm about to run out here in these streets and I'm about to tell the whole world.
And see, when I did that, I told his brother. His brother was shocked. And they came over right away. And he was so angry that he went to go punch me, and I ducked, and he punched his brother.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes.
And that
So he was going to
punch-
do it in front of his
He
family.
was going to do it in front of them.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And what did his brother do? How did he react?
He just grabbed him. He told me to get out the house. He was like, "We got it. Just get out." And I went down the street to my neighbor's house, and I had called the police. And we was in D.C. at this point. And I don't mean no harm. D.C. They say D.C. police slow to come. I promise you, by the time I hung up the phone, I think they was at the bottom of the hill waiting for my phone call because they came up so quick. And I'm like,
Yeah.
God, thank you. You know, so, and that was when they told me that I had to move down. It's my house, but they told me I had to leave. So.
Hold on, somebody. Okay, so we at the beginning of the show, we're running out of time. But at the beginning of the show, we talked about, you were saying that you hope that you sharing your story is helping somebody. We have somebody who posted online that said, I was supposed to be watching this. Right.
Wow.
Amen.
So
Wow.
you know, so there we go. You
Yes.
know,
Amen.
if we reach one, right?
Yes, that's all that.
That's all
I
that
want.
matter. If we reach one, that's very helpful.
And that's why your testimony is so important. Your testimony is not for you; it's for that
someone
person that
else.
said, "I am supposed to be watching this." Because it is happening in so many people's lives.
Yeah.
And like Sherelle said, we don't know what we would do in any situation. But one of the things I know about my personality is that I call and tell my people like, this is it. You
Now,
know?
I'm like that now. I'm like
You know,
that now,
but I don't
wasn't
know
back
if
then.
I had been in that situation, if I had would have been done that, right?
Yeah.
And so we just don't know.
But we
Right.
as women, we have got to stop being so critical and judgmental
Say
of
that
each
again.
other. We've got to stop being critical and judgmental because you really don't know what a person's going through. And your smile or your frown could really do something to them.
Right.
And, you know, they could be on the verge of committing suicide
Yes.
because they don't think they have a way out. There is a way out. You just have to talk. You have to call. You have to tell somebody. But be ready. Make sure you are ready. You make sure you've had enough because you don't want to put anybody else's life in danger and then you go back to them.
Right.
So please make sure you're ready when you make that call or when you tell somebody. Because if your dad or if your brother or somebody helps you and then you go back to them, that's a slap in their face.
Yes.
So
It is.
So, of course, this hour goes by so quickly and we're out of time. But I do want to end on something you just said. There is a way out.
yes.
Yes,
There's a
exactly.
way out.
And thank you, Tracy.
And
My
you
pleasure.
always have to make sure that you are aware of your surroundings, because a lot of women have left and they're still not here to tell their
Yep.
stories today.
Yep.
And so their bravery is not going to go unnoticed. And we have to deal with the sickness of the individual,
Yes.
not blame the victim,
Right.
Because there's some sick individuals who need some help.
Yeah.
And so we thank you, Tracy,
My pleasure.
for coming back for part 2
Yes.
and for sharing your story and just being so honest. And we're so glad that someone chimed in and said that they needed to hear this today because, again, that was the purpose of us having this conversation. And so as we leave and end the show, I want to make sure that you all that came on late know that we are looking for additional topics. Sherelle and I will be celebrating our 1-year anniversary next month. Can you believe it?
Yes.
As Sisters and Company. And it's been so incredible. And so we're looking for topics. We're looking for people to come on out and share their stories with us and what you're doing in life. And so we're gonna compile a list of topics, and we're gonna make sure that we come to you next year better and better and better. And I think we're full for the rest of this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. We love you, and we'll see you next Sunday. Have a blessed afternoon.